Uh, let's talk a little bit about working with JavaScript in Rails. This is a pretty good guide from the official Rails guide. Now, when we talk about AJAX, this is the same in a lot of web development in any other technology, right? So and here you see CoffeeScript, but this is easily understood as JavaScript as well. This is a function, and when it's very easy to look up and decide what it does. But this looks the same as JavaScript right here. This done function. So when you submit a form in Rails, a remote form, or submit a remote link, remember it has the data remote true attribute. What it does is called jQuery AJAX and pass in the URL and the method, whether it's a GET request or a POST request, and then the server will handle it. Okay, so this is called unobtrusive JavaScript because in your code, basically you still write what looks like HTML, and if you don't call data remote true, you don't have that. Let's say a browser may not support JavaScript, you can submit it the normal way. It will submit HTML way, and then it still work. But for browser that understands that that support AJAX, then when you click on the button, it will run the JavaScript, and it get a faster experience. Now, this used to be a good way in the past because there were browsers that did not support JavaScript. There are also web crawler like Google and all of that. So it's very clear to them what the page is trying to do. The page has a message form that can submit. But now even Google JavaScript crawler is very good. So they understand. Oh, you have sort of a form with JavaScript functionalities. So it's not as important anymore to make sure the JavaScript, the site works without JavaScript. We can assume that any modern browser has JavaScript. But if you use the Kindle, like sometimes, in the early version, you may not have it. In some phone that is not smartphone, they have the browser that is really crappy. So if you have the regular form, it still works. So that's still nice to think about. Okay. Now, again, if we don't use the remote form idea and remote link, let's try to understand how we bind JavaScript into a link. Okay, so you can do the simplest way is to use onClick, and then you can put JavaScript in it. Another way is a better way is using event. So we add a data attribute, but all it is that we can have JavaScript in a different file. Unobtrusive JavaScript means you put JavaScript in a different file, not in the same HTML file. So what it does here is that, let's find, right? This is document ready in CoffeeScript, and it means that, okay, after the page has loaded, let's find the link with this data attribute and define an event for it. And then basically this will be set the onClick event similar to this, and then say let's not submit that link, right? But let's handle it, and you can create a link and then change the color by creating a function that is bound to, right? This is called binding, right? Binding to this event. Click on this link, so they can change the color. So that's how it works with the JavaScript in Rails and in a lot of places. So Rails encourages you to write in the different style, in this style. And let's try to do it quickly now. So for example, there should be let's create a button link that say change color. Okay. Let's have it right here. And let's go to this and add a button change color. So I'll add up here. Just put a regular link to change color, maybe it submit to nothing. I don't care, right? And now you can, there are many ways to do it. You can just call this a change color ID link, okay? And let's, I'm not sure if JavaScript here means you shouldn't put the JavaScript at the end of the file here. You could actually do this, right? And then you say, oh, change color. And if um, if you click this link, then basically let's run this function. Alert, click. For example, just to give an example, now we have, let's create the, let's rerun the server. And if you click it on this change color, let's say clicked, right? And notice it goes here. So we need to also say, oh, prevent default. Now this is ugly. The rail say, hey, put it where it should be. Let's put it in message coffee file. Okay. And here is where normally you have document.ready and function, but in JavaScript, that's in JavaScript. In CoffeeScript, it's a little faster. You can just do that. There are faster ways in JavaScript too, but this is that. It means it's the same as this in JavaScript. And this is also document ready. jQuery make it very easy for you to do it. Now with CoffeeScript, just like that. So let's say we want this whole thing, change color. Now click is, it's shortcut for this, and then a function. But it means if you do click like that, it means it's clicking on the link. But if you pass a function with an event as a parameter, then change color is clicked. And I can even pass the event here. Let's log it to the console. And we also want prevent default, so it doesn't follow the link. And let's remove this right here. And let's change color. So let's change something. Let's change this color. Input, message content. Let's say this is CSS. We'll see. We set it to what should we set? Border. CSS will be style. This will be style, and maybe border 1 pixel solid red. Okay, so let's try. And we should click. Let's load this so it works here. When we click on a link, change color is clicked, and this is the event. Now somehow my next one doesn't work, so let's try. Input, message content. That finds the right element, CSS. Now style. It doesn't have it. So let's say JavaScript. Change CSS. No, jQuery. Let's look at the CSS method. Property. So this it's already style, right? So it's almost like this should be like attribute. You're setting that attribute, but that's not the right way to do it. You can actually, it will work, but it's faster if you just do that. Change color and CSS. I think it hasn't been saved. No, we still do something wrong here. Oh, you have to pass in a hash. So it will be like that. My other way, attributes faster. So like this. Now in CoffeeScript, a hash is so commonly used. Let's just make it work here first. Change color. It still doesn't work. To pass in a hash. border. Maybe this border attribute is not good enough, so let's try this first. Yeah? All right. Now in JavaScript, you don't even need the parenthesis if you don't want to, and then for this hash, you can just give it one per row. So that's the same. So that's how you understand CoffeeScript. It basically understands this is the function and this is the hash that's passed to it. Same thing. It works. Great. So basically, this is document ready, and this is how you do it for this function. Now, notice if, however, I go to a different link, different page, it will reload this page, but it doesn't fire document ready. So this may not work. That's when we have to understand what is called turbolinks. Turbolinks say when writing, you often want to put it in document ready. But the right way to do it with jQuery, with turbolinks, is to bind it on page change, not document ready. So not the ready event. So here, to do it is I just define it to a function, to be a function. So window.setup change color, and I just define it to be this function, right? And when now I can do document on page change, I just pass in this window.setup. I can pass in this window setup change color. It's a function. I pass in the function. Of course, you can pass in the function by declaring it, or I can just declare the function first, and I do this. There's nothing wrong if you want to. In some cases, you want to fire this setup change color again. You know, that is nice to have a separate function. So let's try again. And that still works. Great. Note, just to show you what I mean, why we need the on change. Let's somehow room chat, right? Remove this remote. Okay. And if I use this instead of this, I use document ready, and I call window.setup change color. I call this function. Let's load it. So this works, but then I say hello, press enter. I press this again. Now it works because it actually called document ready because it's the post request. So it's a little tricky. Maybe I'm just gonna make it method get, and let's actually put another link. So that's not a good example. Let's give you us a link to refresh. I'll just go back to the root URL. Now you can say root path if you want it for SEO, like for Google to know, oh, you're linking to the whole, like your domain name .com something. Then you can do like root URL. It does usually on the view. Sometimes you want root URL. It's the same thing. So let's say refresh. We go back. Now here, notice I can do that. Now if I refresh and I try again, it doesn't work. That's because document ready doesn't get fired when you post a get request. Turbolinks doesn't, so it doesn't work. But it will work if we use, so this doesn't work. But if you use this, it works in both cases. So it's very important to know that this get fired, right? So you can do console.log to make sure it's fired. So that's TurboLinks and working with JavaScript. I'm using unobtrusive JavaScript. Now, when you deploy the app to Heroku, you don't have all of these files. All you have is just application.js and application.css. That's where that's called Rails assets um, compilation. So Rails will merge all your file into one. Now, there's a setting when you there's a setting for you to decide what files to compile. Let me try to find it over here. So maybe I just call for like application.css assets, initializer assets. So configs initializer assets. So you can tell Rails when you deploy to Heroku, if you want to have a separate file, such as search.js, if you add it here and you want it to be available, if you want messages to be available for another site to call on one page, you have to put this here. It will get compiled into message.js. Otherwise, this whole application assets, the list of files to compile, it only include application.js and application.css. That's it. But on locally, right, on your development machine, of course you have all these files, right? Yeah. When you go to production, that's all you see. So that's important to know what else you want to compile in addition to these two files. Okay. Pre-compile. So now, next is to understand, we already know about form 4, link to form tag and button 2 are similar. You can use remote true to turn it into AJAX. What it does is jQuery will find the forms with remote true and do it. Let me just explain real quick. Rails UJS. And let's look at this file with jQuery. So the magic is only in this. Let's try to find it. So data remote true. Basically, Rails find the form with remote and it handles a lot of things here. So let me try to find the remote, guys. Remote, right? Handle remote. So when remote is true, if Rails, when you pass data remote true, then the form is a remote form. And then basically when you submit the input, Rails will submit the form for you, right? And when we read this, we can find more methods. So just new Rails, they rewrote this file again. In the past, it was really easy to see. It's really to see what it tries to do. But now with a little bit more of TurboLinks magic, it's hard to see now. But you can see here, for example, if you add a data confirm, it also find that and fire an alert. So alert, it's called fire here, but it will throw up an alert confirmation box. Let's try that. Let's make sure that we ask the user before you do delete here, right? So this is through Rails JavaScript. So how do I go back to the source code? See, when you need to remove, so it's under messages, that's partial. So here you can say data confirmation confirm, are you sure? Right? And this is taken care of by Rails jQuery UJS. And you notice that it's handled over under assets. Under assets, load it again. Under this guy, asset. Notice we load it here. jQuery UJS, right? Unobtrusive JavaScript. Are you sure? That's one other property. Okay, so you can make this work even without remote. So one more time. Now let's say if I don't want this to be remote, it still work, right? This. Now it confirm first. You press OK. It submit the form. Right. So we're using both of them now, remote and confirm. Here's another thing that's really useful, is called replace disable with confirm disable. So let me see what it's called. Disable with data disable with. All right. So here I call disable with, I say deleting. So let's see. If I do this, okay, deleting. It changed to deleting before it. So that's while you're waiting, deleting. So let's say this post, if I make sure that when you delete, let's make the process of deleting very slow. So let's sleep for 2 seconds here. And when you create, let's sleep for 2 seconds as well. So here, delete, deleting. So it's very slow and then it's deleted. Now I want to be the same thing. I don't want to click post twice. Post, now I can click post again 3 times. Now what happens? I just created 2 records because I clicked many times. Right? It just created 3 times because I create, one more time, test. And it takes 2 seconds. So create. So I do it 4 times. And basically, you see that that's not good. Just how do we prevent that? So to prevent that, it's something similar, disable with. So let's find that file. Find the form. And here you call data disable with, please wait. And it will disable this this button with a message. Hello. Now post. I cannot do anything now. So I can only create 1. So that's a very good way to protect your form. Okay. So, and it's a good way to tell the user that the page is submitting the data. Okay. Now, okay, that's nice on this, but how about this, right? When you delete, you know it takes a long time, but you don't want this to take so long to remove from the page. So one more thing that I'm going to show you. It's called optimistic rendering. Basically, let's go back to messages and let's just remove this disable with. Now we know this is still a long time. All right, look, delete. Let's remove confirm, are you sure? Because that's, I don't need that. But I know it's still very slow. Look, it's slow, right? So let's keep the disable with because that's nice, right? But that's slow. I don't like that. I know it takes a long time, but maybe you should remove this message even before going to the server. So this is called optimistic. I don't know, maybe optimistic AJAX UI. So what optimistic UI means is that you predict that the server, you can search more about this, and when we know that it's going to remove this element. It's like when you like a tweet, you still add a count, but then you still send a message to the server because you know this is just going to disappear. So for example, to do that, we know there's an element here, so we go to JavaScript file, and let's say if you click on any message, so if you click on this message, click, no, we want to click on delete, right? So this is the delete, so inside this message, so let's say this delete button, we find it delete link, so let's name class delete. Okay, so let's see. First, let's just console.log deleting. This is a little tricky, so let's see if it works, because Rails is also binding a click event, so I'm not even sure if this is going to work. Now, what I was trying to say is message a.delete. Earlier I didn't refresh the page, I think. So if I click here, okay, right, and we're trying to bind this to message a.delete to a click event, and we say that when you click this before you submit to the server, please remove this from the view. Okay, so let me try to see why it's not showing console, like why it's not logging, right? Let's try one more time. You can actually make sure that the JavaScript is loaded. Messages here. We have this. When you click on something, let's do that. But when I click on it, it doesn't work, because actually this is one of the tricky thing, is that Rails already adding this event, and there's a problem that this may not work. So I'm just removing the remote attribute. Okay, and try this again. Click, and it posts. Well, something is not right. It's not rendering this. Oh, you know what happens? This is happening too early. Before this JavaScript is run before this HTML is in the header. So in the document head. So this is where we do that, and we do this after the page is already loaded. So let's do it one more time here. I click. Now you see deleting, and it followed through. Good. So now let's put back remote and see if this is still the same. Click. Deleting. That's very good, right? Now let's now make it fast. So hello. Let's just make the create action very fast. I create a few more. Test 1, test 2, and then delete. Now because I have this here. It's a little tricky, but let me create a few to show you that idea. So okay, so just reload the page. Let's make this disappear. So when you click delete, I'm going to take this element, the current element, take the parent, which is the message one, and I just remove. Okay? Click. Deleting. I want it to remove, but it's not removing it. So let's deleting. Let's make sure we have the right parent. Deleting this parent. Okay, so maybe instead of remove, I just do HTML set to nothing first. There. So that's like, we can remove it that way. So it's optimistic because before the server has to render anything. And if you already know this, then your destroy.js, your destroy here, you don't have to do anything. It's almost like liking a post, because, well, technically you can re-render it, but here I can just click and it's gone. Okay, now that's how you do optimistic. And then usually you want to do both, just in case the server fail. But when the server re-render, it doesn't change anything, but we make sure it works just fine. So that's how you bind an extra event, and notice it has to be within this document change, page change. Okay, so here's still one more problem. Look, I do this. If I click delete here, it's still slow. You know why? Yeah, so because this is not run again. So one way to do this is to call this a function. Just put this, I just call this like window.setup delete. Move this over here. Move this 3 line over here, and let's call this guy. Right? It's the same, but now I can call this guy after I delete an element. I have to set it up again. Right? So it means here, new element, new message, but you can now delete this. You have to apply it to these elements, but it's not working here. Let's say that, see, that's very fast, right? It's very fast. But if I say allow 1, allow 2, and I click here, I need this to work. Now, right now it doesn't work, look, because we need to set it in create. After I create a new allow 3, I'm running the setup. I run this setup function. Setup delete. Look, allow 4. Right? I need to run this setup function. Reload it one more time. So allow 5. Just console.log. Allow 6. Setup delete. So with now that function set up, I can run. Now it works every time I delete. Right? Now this is being slow. It's really slow because again it takes 2 seconds, right? So that's the idea. So it can be very tricky to think where the JavaScript should go. I show you one more final magic, which is you actually don't need to set it up like this. And in your create action, you don't need this either. You just have to tell jQuery to be smarter. Don't bind this to delete, because you're binding to an element that is new, right? You're binding it to this element, and when you press allow, when you put a new message, this element has not been defined with bound, has not been bound with the click event. Here's a different way. You actually can say, define me an event on messages. When I click on a messages delete. So you always check when you click within this messages box. If you click on something that matches this pattern, okay? So this is a more advanced syntax. You bind it when you click on this, but this messages wrapper. You check whether you are actually clicking an a.delete, means an anchor text, anchor tag with a delete class. Then you run this. Let's see if it works. New, and it still works. So this is very powerful. If you know a little bit more jQuery, your life is simpler because you're defining it on this whole. It's like in iOS, you set the gesture recognizer on the bigger element, and then you check when you click what target is it, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit more, a few more tricks. This one is we will check in this as optimistic update, right? UI update with JavaScript. And let me just comment out the sleep method here. So it's very fast, and that's the idea.